Hello and welcome back to another NuclearCraft update video. This time we're looking at version 2.8. I'm currently on version 2.8C of the mod. There might be a 2.8D that comes out in the next day or so. It just depends on whether or not I can get it out. I'm leaving to go to university and then I'll come back. I've nearly got all of the textures done for the molten salt reactors, and then finally we can start adding them to the game. If you want to actually look at basically how the molten salt reactor is going to work, it's going to work pretty much like the real life one. So just literally go on Google, just type in molten salt reactor, go on the Wikipedia page, and you'll see like an image of you'll just see an image on the top right of the Wikipedia page for molten salt reactors. That's pretty much how it's going to work, but in Minecraft. So get ready for that. It's going to be awesome. But anyway, that's for later. Today I want to show you all the stuff that's been added in 2.8. So you can see some of the stuff around here. And after this video, I want to make a quick video about. It's not going to be very long. It's going to be about the language files. So if you're making a mod pack or something, or even if you're making a language file for another language, or if you're making a resource pack or whatever, I want to show you basically how the new language file works for NuclearCraft. It's been sort of modified a bit so that it can be a bit more flexible for people who want to put different sorts of information into the game. So yeah, I'll do that after this. But for now, we're just looking at the update. There's a couple things here. So first of all, the first thing that's been added is 5 new types of cooler. If we type in cooler here, you can see there is 5 more. We've got the iron cooler, emerald cooler, copper cooler, tin cooler, magnesium cooler. Yeah, so there's 5. So iron cooler must touch at least one active gold cooler. So you'd have to have something like this. So the gold cooler next to the iron cooler, but the gold cooler itself has to be active, so it needs to be next to a redstone cooler, but that needs to be next to a reactor cell. And the water cooler needs to be next to a reactor casing. So this looks like a bit of a faff. The iron cooler doesn't cool that much, only 60 heat per tick. Still better than water. Generally, when I've built my reactors, I've very often found that iron coolers go in the place where water coolers usually would. Sometimes when you're filling the gaps and trying to put water coolers, like in the holes where other coolers can't fit, you'll find actually a lot of places iron coolers fit there. That's generally just because of gold coolers usually being adjacent to water coolers. And if you have a sort of symmetric build, sometimes the gold cooler is next to more than one water cooler. And so sometimes you can fit an iron cooler in there and just get a little bit more cooling going on. So although it looks like you've got to have quite a lot of infrastructure here for iron coolers to work properly, you'll find most of the time you already have that. So check your designs and see if the iron cooler is any good. But I think you'll find it will be. Then the emerald cooler needs to be next to a graphite block, an active graphite block. So this needs to be next to a cell itself. Actually, I forgot about that. And a reactor cell. So this is actually quite useful. A lot of the times you'll have a little bit more compact designs, maybe like this, where you've got a 2x3 cell setup, maybe something like this. So these 2 cells are going to be feeding off each other, maybe this one and this one. So you're going to have something like that. Oh, I've just destroyed the cooler. So once in a while you'll have a good place for an emerald cooler. The main thing about emerald coolers to keep in mind is that they do cool a huge amount. They're quite expensive, obviously, 6 emeralds. But 140 heat per tick is really, really good. It's up there with the best. It's as good as cryothium and endurium. So you'll find some places to put this. The one thing to keep in mind with the emerald cooler is that it doesn't have any sort of, it doesn't go very well with other coolers. So this is more of a sort of very expensive but not very interactive cooler. So you'll have to find some places to go there. So although it's good, heat-wise, it's maybe not so good in particular designs. So it's probably quite a specific cooler, this, but I'm sure you'll find use for it. Then we've got the glowstone cooler. Again, I forgot that you need to have a cell next to these graphite blocks, but the copper cooler needs to be next to an active glowstone cooler. So glowstone, of course, needs to be next to 2 active graphite blocks. So again, this is one of those things where it's sort of a fill the gap sort of deal. A lot of the time you'll find that copper coolers can go in places where other coolers can't. So that's basically the idea of the copper cooler. Again, only 60 heat per tick, but it's better than 20, which is what water is. So yeah, there we go, copper cooler, pretty simple. Then we've got the tin cooler, which needs to be between 2 lapis coolers. It can't be adjacent like that, that wouldn't work. It has to actually be between along the same axis. So something like that would work, or something like this would work. So as long as it's in the line with the 2 lapis coolers, it will work. And that, I think, is 80 heat per tick for the tin cooler, yeah, which is a little bit better. That's as good as the redstone cooler and some of the other ones. Again, sometimes you'll have a lot of cases where you have 2 lapis coolers like this, and you'll have your reactor casing along here. A lot of the time you can't really fit too much in here other than water coolers. So instead you can fit a tin cooler in there and you get some extra cooling happening. So again, it's one of those coolers where it's just fill the gaps, just for an extra bit of cooling possible. And finally, we got the magnesium cooler. This needs to be adjacent to a liquid helium and a reactor casing. Unlike the tin cooler, this doesn't need to be in a line like this. The liquid helium can be, at an angle. So, liquid helium cooler, reactor casing. Liquid helium cooler itself needs to be next to an active quartz and a reactor casing, and the quartz, I believe, needs to be next to an active graphite block. So again, this is one of those things where, in very particular setups where you've got liquid helium coolers going on, you might find there's gaps where the magnesium cooler would be better. And keep in mind, the magnesium cooler is 100 heat per tick, so it's a very good cooler, so it's worth using if you can. So I think that's all of things I should say about these coolers. They're pretty similar to the ones that are already in the game. They just have different rules about where they can be placed. So hopefully that just gives a little bit more depth to the reactor system. So I hope you enjoy using them. Okay, next thing. Lots of new depleted blocks. Thank you to Xenon54 for suggesting this and actually adding most of the code for this. So the depleted blocks are basically just the blocks of the sort of fertile fuel. So they just, they're all here. They're pretty, recipes that you'd expect. The only thing to really say about these is that they can be put next to the decay generator. Their, amount of power they output can be changed in the configs. So basically, the best is Californium, but obviously that's the hardest one to get. And there are other ones that have various amounts of RF per tick. But so basically, you've got the choice of a little bit more power or deplete it all the way back down to lead or uranium or whatever type of fuel you want. So that's another option. Just makes the decay generator a little bit more colourful, really, doesn't it? Which is quite nice. So there we are. That's the new decay blocks. Quite nice. Next thing is the fission cooler, the Fission Core. Sorry, the Fusion Core now tells you how much heat changes is going on, and I actually need to turn this is off at the moment because this has been off for too long. But you can see here that you can see in this temperature gauge now it tells you what the change is, and this is very useful when you're doing active cooling. So let me just show you when I'm doing active cooling here. I'm just going to set up a one of these active coolers. Let's just set one up here. Just instead of putting infinite water source next to it. You'll see in here now when I start doing some active cooling. It'll actually tell me once the active cooling kicks in. Anyway, so you can see active cooling there, 200 K per tick, Kelvin per tick. So basically, what you can do is try and match the active cooling. So if you take away the active cooling, you'll be able to see basically how much the temperature is changing when the efficiency is very high. And so the idea is what you want to do is check what temperature change you want to cancel with the active cooling, and then add that amount of active cooling to your fusion setup, and then you'll be able to hover around the 100% rate. So instead of the 90% area, which is what the comparator does, that's sort of the maximum efficiency you can get really with a comparator. You can absolutely max out the efficiency now with active cooling, and it's a lot easier now because you can actually see what the cooling rate is, and you can compare that to the temperature change, and you can vary the amount of cooling you give and work out how to get that 100% efficiency, which is what you really want, just to absolutely squeeze all the power out of that fusion fuel. So play around with that, and hopefully that should be a lot easier now to get right. That's pretty simple. Next thing on the list, I'm looking at the config here. Oh, the compact blocks is right in front of me here. So we've got some new compact collectors. So before, obviously, we had the helium collector, cobblestone gen, infinite water source, and nitrogen collector. Well, basically what you can do is if you just take one of these collectors and just have 8 of them surrounded with bronze, you'll get the compact version, which is just 8 times the normal amount. It's basically just 8 of them squeezed together in one block. And then if you get 8 of these with a gold ingot, you can then make the dense version, which is 64 of the original. So this will make hopefully helium farms and nitrogen farms and water, cobblestone farms, all sorts of stuff a little bit more compact and easier to make. It won't be so much of a hassle to have a lot of room for it. So you can see here that they're all just producing helium, but they just produce them at slightly different rates. And the cobblestone, of course, will produce different rates. The thing with the cobblestone to keep in mind is that just like all of the machines, energy and fluids get outputted automatically, but items do not, for the moment anyway. Maybe I should add that. But for now, you're going to have to get a servo or something from thermodynamics and pull them out like this. But for now, this is not a feature. You have to actually pull them out. They don't automatically eject. Maybe I should add that. I'm going to add that for 2.8D, I guess. So there we go. That's compact collectors. That's actually quite nice. Next thing is the spac slow was fixed. So the spac slow before wasn't breaking like sand and wood and wool properly. It is now. It's just because there were some changes in the code for tools and I didn't realise. That's now been fixed. Big thing. This is a big change. It's not enabled by default. You have to enable this in the configs if you want to do it. But now what will happen is if I just set up a few, fusion electromagnets here. I'll just set up a few in a random pattern. Basically what used to happen, of course, is that you had to power all of these electromagnets with wires or cables or whatever. So let's just get an energy cell here. So what that used to happen is that you'd place the energy cell down and it would power the electromagnets next to each other. So those two would be powered, but you then have to put cables to all the rest of them to power them. So for example, if I want to power this one, I've got to move it over there and there you can see it's going in. So you had to actually use wires. But if you don't want to do that anymore, and a lot of people have suggested this, you can go into your mod options, go into NuclearCraft, config, processor configs, and down here, passive permeation. If you set this to true, then basically all of the different passive blocks, like the collectors that I just showed, and the electromagnets and the active coolers even, what they will do is they will start to just sort of spread their energy and fluid around to adjacent types of the block. So if I set this to true, okay, so because I was on a server, I actually go into the server configs to change this, so hopefully this will now work. Obviously changing the client set like configs on the server doesn't actually do anything, but you can see now, huzzah, you can see the power is starting to spread straight away. So you don't actually need to connect cables anymore, so I could literally take all the cables off this and it would still run. So that's a configurable setting, you can do that. It's disabled by default, but if you want this on your server, just enable it. And the electromagnets, the active coolers, all sorts, all those types of blocks will spread their power and fluids around, as you'd expect. So that's a feature if you want it. So yeah, it's pretty good. Next thing is a Brazilian Portuguese language file. Thank you very much to Interplay02 for that. Thank you for a new language file. Always nice to have new language files. Yeah, language files are easy to customize. We'll go through that in another video. The tooltip should now be a little bit better. So before the tooltip width was a little bit arbitrary, but now you can see that they're all the tooltips are sort of roughly the same size now. Again, that's something to do with the new language files. Lots of bug fixes and stuff, and I think that's pretty much all of the changes that have been made in this update. So hopefully that's everything you need. If you've got any questions, of course, go in the comments as usual. This mod has just actually been added to FTB Revelation, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much to the FTB team for doing that. So that's a really good thing. And hopefully we can keep adding some cool stuff to this mod, and hopefully you guys keep enjoying it and giving suggestions, because this mod's fueled by suggestions pretty much. And I will see you next time when the next version of NuclearCraft is released. Well, actually, no, I won't. I'll see you in the next video when I discuss language files. And I will see you then, I guess. Thank you very much for watching.